I remember the exact moment I knew my marriage was over. Not when Robert called me worthless for the 100th time. Not when I found the credit card statements hidden in his car, but when I stood in our kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at my reflection in the microwave door, and couldn't recognize the woman looking back at me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From when Robert was everything I thought I wanted. We met 7 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers at my office, surprise dinner reservations, weekend getaways. My friends called him Prince Charming. My mother cried happy tears when we got engaged after just 8 months. "You're so lucky, Sofia," she'd said, squeezing my hands. "He's successful, handsome, and he adores you." The wedding was perfect. A vineyard ceremony, 150 guests, my dream dress. Robert's speech made everyone cry. He called me his better half, his reason for living. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. The changes started small. So small I didn't even notice them at first. "Honey, that dress makes you look tired," he'd say, his tone gentle, concerned. "Why don't you wear the blue one I bought you instead?" Then it was my cooking. "It's good, but my mother makes it differently. Maybe you should ask her for the recipe?" Then my job. "You work too hard for too little money. When we have kids, you'll quit anyway, right?" I was a graphic designer at a small firm. I loved my work, loved my colleagues, loved the creative freedom. But Robert would sigh dramatically whenever I brought work home, roll his eyes when I talked about projects. "Nobody cares about logos, Sofia. I'm closing million-dollar deals, and you're picking fonts." By our second anniversary, I'd stopped talking about work entirely. By our third, I'd stopped seeing my friends regularly. Robert always had something planned on girls' night, always had a reason why I should stay home. "Your friends are single and bitter," he'd say. "They're jealous of what we have. Why do you need them when you have me?" The financial control crept in like fog. First, he suggested we combine bank accounts. It's what married couples do. Then he took over paying the bills. I'm better with numbers. Then he gave me an allowance. This way we can save more effectively. $500 a month for groceries, gas, and anything personal I needed. Meanwhile, he drove a $70,000 BMW and wore $1,000 suits. "We're building our future," he'd say when I questioned it. Trust me. I trusted him. God, I was such a fool. The verbal abuse escalated so gradually, I didn't realize I was drowning until I was already underwater. The pet names turned cruel. Sweetheart became stupid. Honey became useless. "You're lucky I put up with you," he'd say after criticizing everything from my appearance to my intelligence. No one else would. And I believed him. When you hear something enough times, it becomes your truth. The loneliest part wasn't the isolation from friends and family. It was lying next to him every night, feeling like I was sleeping beside a stranger who wore my husband's face. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off me now recoiled if I touched him. "You've let yourself go," he said one night, poking my stomach. "Maybe if you lost some weight, I'd be more interested." I was a size 6, the same size I'd been when we met. The turning point came on a Thursday. I'd been sick with the flu, barely able to get out of bed for 3 days. Robert hadn't helped once. Claimed he couldn't risk getting sick with important meetings coming up. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make soup when his phone left carelessly on the counter, buzzed with a credit card notification. $500 spent at the Diamond Lounge. I knew that name. It was a strip club downtown. My hands shook as I picked up his phone. He'd never given me the passcode, but I'd seen him type it once, his birthday. How narcissistic. The credit card app opened, and my world tilted. Thousands of dollars. Thousands upon thousands, spent on things he'd never told me about. The Diamond Lounge appeared weekly. Online poker sites. Sports betting apps. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Always charges for 2 people. But we were saving for our future. I scrolled back months, years. The pattern was clear. While I'd been stretching $500 to cover everything, while I'd been wearing the same clothes for 3 years, while I'd been skipping lunch to save money, he'd been spending like a king. I heard his car in the driveway and quickly put the phone back. My heart pounded as he walked in, loosening his tie. "Why aren't you in bed?" No concern, just irritation. Making soup, I managed. He walked past me without another word, grabbed his phone, and headed to his office. The door clicked shut behind him. That night, something fundamental shifted in me. The fog began to clear. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how he'd stay late at client dinners but come home smelling like perfume I didn't wear. How he'd guard his phone like it contained state secrets. How he'd gaslight me when I asked simple questions. "Where were you until 2 a.m.? I told you I had that conference call with Tokyo. You never listen." Honestly, Sofia, sometimes I think you're losing it. But I hadn't lost it. Not yet. I started planning my escape in secret. It sounds dramatic, but that's what it was, an escape. I couldn't just leave. I had no money of my own, nowhere to go, and 7 years of being told I was nothing had nearly convinced me it was true. The first step was creating a secret email account at the library. Then, slowly, carefully, I started rebuilding connections. I reached out to my old friend Lisa, the one Robert hated most. Her response was immediate. "Sofia, I've been worried about you for years. Whatever you need, I'm here." I began saving money any way I could. When I went grocery shopping, I'd buy items and return them later for cash, pocketing the difference. I'd say I needed gas money and walk places instead. $20 here, $30 there. I hid it in a tampon box, the one place Robert would never look. I also started documenting everything, every cruel comment, every suspicious charge I could photograph when he left his phone out, every late night, every lie. I sent it all to my secret email. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I had to be the same beaten-down, compliant wife he expected, even as I was building my escape route brick by brick. "You're getting fat," he'd say, and I'd apologize. "This dinner is garbage," he'd say, and I'd promise to do better. "You're nothing without me," he'd say, and I'd nod. But inside, a fire was growing. 6 months into my secret planning, I made a discovery that changed everything. Robert had left his laptop open, and I saw an email notification pop up. It was from his company's HR department. Subject line, "Termination meeting scheduled." My hands trembled as I read. Robert wasn't closing million-dollar deals. He hadn't been for months. He'd been put on performance improvement plans, missed quotas, failed to deliver. He was being fired in 2 weeks. All those late nights at the office? All those important meetings? Lies. He'd been gambling away our savings, spending money we didn't have, digging us into debt while pretending to be a success. I had 2 weeks before Robert's termination. 2 weeks to finalize everything before he'd be home all day, watching my every move. 2 weeks before he'd discover the extent of his financial destruction and inevitably blame me for it. I worked faster. Lisa helped me find a small studio apartment across town. It was tiny, but it was on a month-to-month lease, and the landlord accepted cash deposits. I used my saved money, almost $2,000 by then, to secure it. I opened my own bank account at a different bank across town. I had my old company reach out about freelance work. They'd been trying to hire me back for years, but Robert had always forbidden it. Now, I quietly accepted, asking them to hold the contract for just a few more weeks. The day before his termination, I took a sick day while Robert was at work, his last day, though he didn't know I knew. I moved everything that mattered to me. Not much, really. Some clothes, my grandmother's jewelry that I'd hidden, my laptop, important documents. It all fit in 2 suitcases. I left everything he'd bought me. The designer bags I'd never wanted, the jewelry that felt like chains, the clothes he'd picked out. They weren't mine. They were costumes for the character he'd wanted me to play. That evening, Robert came home in a rage. Not because he'd been fired. He hadn't told me yet. He was angry because the cable company had called about an overdue bill. "Did you forget to pay this?" he screamed, waving the notice. I hadn't forgotten. He'd never given me access to pay it. "I'm sorry," I said, for the last time. "You're useless, Sofia. Completely worthless. What would you do without me? You'd be nothing." Nothing. I slept on the couch that night, claiming I didn't want to disturb him with my coughing. Really, I couldn't bear to lie next to him one more night knowing that tomorrow, I'd be free. The next morning, a Friday, Robert left for what he pretended was work. He'd been doing this charade for 2 weeks already, I realized. Leaving in his suit, spending the day God knows where, coming home at normal time. The performance of success was more important to him than the truth. I waited exactly 30 minutes after he left. Then I walked out with my 2 hidden suitcases, got in my car, and drove away from 7 years of hell. I left a note on the kitchen counter, simple and direct. "Robert, I know about the gambling. I know about the strip clubs. I know about the termination. I know about all of it. I'm done being nothing. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch. Sofia." I didn't have a lawyer yet, but I would soon. The first night in my studio apartment was surreal. It was so quiet. No criticism, no yelling, no walking on eggshells. I ordered pizza, with pineapple, which Robert had always said was disgusting and classless, and ate it in my pajamas while watching whatever I wanted on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., my phone exploded. 47 missed calls. 63 text messages. They ranged from rage to panic to false sweetness. "Where are you? You can't leave me. Come back and we'll talk about this. I'm sorry, baby, please. You're nothing without me. Remember that. I'll change, I promise. If you don't come back, I'll find you." I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. The next morning, I had 127 missed calls, 89 texts, 15 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I went to a lawyer Lisa had recommended, a woman who specialized in divorces from emotional and financial abuse. "Document everything," she said. "Save every message, every voicemail. Don't respond to anything. Let him dig his own grave." And boy, did he dig. Over the next 3 weeks, Robert's attempts to contact me escalated dramatically. He showed up at my old workplace, only to be told I no longer worked there. He called my mother, spinning elaborate lies about my mental breakdown, but I'd already told her everything. She cried for hours, apologizing for pushing me to marry him. He posted on social media about his concerns for my mental health and how I'd abandoned him during a difficult time. Mutual friends reached out, worried. I sent them screenshots of his messages, the credit card statements, everything. One by one, they blocked him. The extinction burst. That's what my therapist called it. When an abuser loses control, they escalate frantically, trying everything to regain it. He found my apartment somehow, probably followed me from the lawyer's office. He stood outside my door for 2 hours, alternating between pounding and pleading. Sofia, please, I love you. I can't live without you. I've changed. I got a new job. I'll go to therapy, please. My neighbor, an elderly woman named Ruth who'd taken me under her wing, called the police. They removed him with a warning. The next day, I got a restraining order. The new job he claimed to have? Another lie. He was living with his mother, the woman who'd always insisted her son could do no wrong. She called me once, trying to guilt me into coming back. He's suffering, Sofia. He cries every night. How can you do this to him? The same way he did it to me for 7 years, I replied and hung up. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. The freelance work with my old company turned into a full-time remote position with better pay than I'd ever had. I started therapy to undo the damage. I joined a gym, not to lose weight but to feel strong again. I adopted a cat, a scraggly rescue named Phoenix, who loved me unconditionally. Small victories felt monumental. Choosing my own clothes, eating what I wanted, watching shows he'd banned for being stupid, going to bed when I felt like it. Every choice I made for myself was a tiny revolution. 6 months after I left, the divorce was finalized. Robert had fought it initially, but when my lawyer presented the evidence of financial abuse and deception, his lawyer advised him to settle. I didn't want alimony. I wanted freedom. I got the car, he got the house he could no longer afford. Within 2 months, I heard he'd lost it to foreclosure. A year passed. I moved to a bigger apartment, one with actual sunlight and a small balcony where Phoenix could sun himself. I'd been promoted at work. I'd reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I'd even started dating again, slowly, carefully, with boundaries I'd never had before. Then, one random Tuesday, I saw him. I was at a coffee shop, waiting for a client meeting, when he walked in. He looked terrible, gained weight, unkempt, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit properly. He was with a woman, younger, pretty in a fragile way. She laughed too loudly at something he said, but her eyes looked vacant. I recognized that look. I'd worn it for 7 years. He saw me and froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the coffee shop. Then he started walking toward me, leaving his date confused at their table. Sofia, he said, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. You look good. I said nothing. I've been thinking about you. About us. Maybe we could talk sometime? Get coffee? The audacity of this man. No, I said simply. I've changed, Sofia. I've been going to therapy. I understand what I did wrong. I'm different now. I looked at the girl at his table, nervously checking her phone. Already trained not to question him walking away from her mid-conversation. No, Robert, you haven't. I stood to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but the familiar gesture made my skin crawl. You were nothing before me, he hissed, the mask slipping. You'll be nothing after me. I pulled my wrist away and looked him directly in the eyes. The man who'd made me feel so small for so many years suddenly looked tiny himself. Desperate. Pathetic. You're right, I said calmly. I was nothing. Nothing to you. I was a prop in your performance. A supporting character in the Robert show. But here's what you never understood. Being nothing to you freed me to become everything to myself. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I have a successful career now. I have friends who actually care about me. I have a home that feels safe. I have a life filled with choices I make for myself. And you? You're still the same man, just with a different audience. I gestured to the girl at his table, who was now watching us with concern. How long before you give her an allowance, Robert? How long before her friends become toxic? How long before she's nothing too? That's not. I wouldn't. Save her or don't, that's your choice, but stay away from me. The restraining order is still valid. I walked past him, past his confused date, out into the sunshine. My hands were shaking, but my head was high. That night, his mother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice tired. I see it now. What he is. He's just like his father was. I spent so many years making excuses, enabling him. The girl he's with now, she's so young, so naive. I tried to warn her, but she's in love, I finished. And he's charming. And everyone else must be wrong about him. Yes, she whispered. I'm sorry, Sofia. For everything. It was closure I hadn't known I needed. It's been 3 years now since I left Robert. 3 years since I walked out of that house with 2 suitcases and a heart full of terror and hope. The girl I saw him with that day? She lasted 8 months before showing up at my door, somehow finding my address, looking for answers. We talked for hours. She left with the name of my lawyer and my therapist. Last I heard, she was doing well, working on her master's degree, something Robert had convinced her to abandon. Robert himself faded into obscurity. Mutual acquaintances occasionally mentioned seeing him around town, always with a new woman, always performing the same tired act. But these updates come less frequently now. He's becoming what he always feared, forgettable. Me? I'm thriving in ways I never imagined possible. I started my own design company 6 months ago. It's small, but it's mine. Every decision, every success, every failure, they're all mine to own. My first big client signed last week, and I celebrated with Lisa and our friends with champagne that I bought with my own money. I'm in a relationship now with someone who sees me as an equal partner. James doesn't try to fix me or control me. He celebrates my successes and supports me through failures without making either about him. When I told him about Robert, about everything, he held my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with this." That's it. No anger on my behalf, no threats to confront Robert, no treating me like damaged goods. Just acceptance and respect. Phoenix, my cat, is fat and happy, ruling over my now 2-bedroom apartment like the king he believes himself to be. The walls are covered in my own artwork, pieces I created just for joy, not for clients or approval. I still go to therapy, though less frequently now. My therapist says I've done the work, really done it. The hypervigilance has faded. I don't flinch when someone raises their voice. I don't apologize reflexively for existing. I don't need permission to be myself. Last week, I was at the grocery store buying ingredients for dinner, including pineapple for a pizza because I genuinely love it, when I caught my reflection in the freezer door. The woman looking back at me was someone I recognized. Not the girl who'd fallen for Robert's charm, not the ghost I'd become during our marriage, but me. Actually me. Strong, capable, whole. I thought about that night in my kitchen, staring at my reflection in the microwave door, not recognizing myself. That woman was nothing, not because Robert said so, but because I'd let myself disappear trying to become what he wanted. But here's what I learned. Being nothing isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning. When everything false is stripped away, when all the roles and expectations and criticisms fall silent, when you're left with nothing but yourself, that's when you discover who you really are. Robert was right about one thing. I was nothing without him. I was nothing. Until I was everything. I was nothing. Until I chose myself. I was nothing. Until I walked away and became exactly who I was always meant to be. And that woman? She's definitely something. She's free.